The summer that I was 15, going to be 16, I had gone to a dance at the local grade school, not because I wanted to, but because my mother made me because I was driving her nuts. And at that party, I met a rather, in fact, quite a handsome young man. His name was Jim Williams, and we were two of the oldest ones at the party because it was a grade school party. And so he gravitated over to me. He walked me home, and we began to date. And the rest of the story is we ultimately married and had 3 children. However, he began to come to my house on a regular basis, and one of the things that he was crazy about was desserts. Well, my family was not a chocolate eating family. The only chocolate we ever had was Mama's homemade chocolate fudge. But I would make cherry cakes and spice cakes and white cakes and yellow cakes and even a rum cake once, but no chocolate. And he finally said, and I love to make cherry pies and pecan pies and coconut pies. And he said, don't you ever make anything chocolate. And I said, well, not much because my family's not a big chocolate family. He said, well, we've got to fix this. So he took me to visit his grandmother, Mama Helen Williams. And he said, Mama Helen, you've got to teach this girl to make chocolate pies. And she said, well, I can do that. So he took me to her kitchen and she got out all the things. Now, I'm not going to go into how to make pie crust because I haven't made a pie crust in years, but I could probably still. But first you made your pie crust and you baked your crust and you had to stick holes in it so it wouldn't bubble up and be. And then she said, now there's no need to make chocolate pies for a family unless you're going to make 2. So she said, the first thing you do is you put 3 cups of sugar in your pan. And then you add almost a cup of Hershey's cocoa. And I said, that's a lot of chocolate. She said, that's the way this family likes it. And she said, you mix all of that together. And then you take 6 to 7 eggs and you separate the yolks and the whites. And you very carefully put your whites aside. But don't put them in the refrigerator, it'll ruin them. And you mix those yolks in. And then you take 3 cups of sweet milk. And you mix all that together. And you put in a dash of salt, and you have your vanilla flavoring ready, and you have 2 pats of butter ready. But you put it on top of the stove on low to medium heat, and you stand there. Oh, and I left out an ingredient. She used flour, but nowadays we use cornstarch. And she said the rule was 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, approximately, for each cup of sugar. And you had to mix that all in before you put in any of the wet ingredients. And then you watched, and you cooked, and you cooked, and you cooked, and you stirred with a wooden spoon the whole time. And when it started to thicken, you were very careful. And she said, when it's done, it will look like little hot pots. And at that time, I'd never been to Yellowstone. I didn't know what a hot pot was, but apparently she did. She said it'll make little wells, and it'll pop up on your arms, and it will burn you. But when it does that, it's thickening, and it's done. And so you pour half in one pie shell. You add your butter and your vanilla and stir it in. And then you pour half into one pie shell and half in the other. And then you make your meringue. Now, I never could make as good a meringue as my daughter Sue, who makes the prettiest meringue in the world. But for each egg white, you would add a tablespoon of sugar. But the trick was you beat your eggs to a certain point. You put in a pinch of, I forgot what you call it, that white stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You can't think of the name of it either. Anyway, and then as you're beating your egg whites, you add your sugar, tablespoon at a time, and it really helps if you have a stand mixer. And then you put it on your pie, and you put the pie in the oven and brown it. And my family fondly calls it black pie, because it is so chocolatey that it's almost black.